awesome.
Right. Aaron, the rain is falling heavily.
I've heard that.
In Amigos Studios
I've heard
East.
that, yeah.
It's been a long time since I've recorded anything.
You're
here.
in the studio.
Yeah.
A rare Saturday night appearance, but thank you for coming over to the arcade.
I came through your darkened backyard and swung open the door, expecting to find you doing something nefarious, which you were.
Yeah, I'm slightly nefarious, but.
I entered and found that it was a perfect time to record some Jupiter Ace talk. What better time than now to talk Jupiter Ace? So, Aaron, tell me about how you actually get this emulator to work.
It's funny because I used a particular emulator. In fact, it's funny because Brent asked me, this Jupiter Ace, and keep in mind that Brent picked this. I want to make that abundantly clear. Brent asked me, he goes, what emulator are you using? And so I used Spud Ace.
Spud Ace.
Spud Ace.
Any relation to Spud McKenzie?
No, none. So, first of all, Brent just made some pie pieces at random. I was putting pie pieces on for tomorrow's show, right behind the curtain here. And here's what I picked. This is going to be the pie piece for tomorrow's show. This is the Sharp MZ. You ever heard of this?
I have.
You have?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was stunned that you'd heard of that. I'd never heard of it. So this is, when we get down to the rock bottom of pie pieces, you get weird stuff like this, right? So I had to look and see if there was an emulator for it and see if there was any games for it. Well, it turns out there are, and there is and there are. So we're going to be putting this on the wheel. British computers, I don't know, and Brit just randomly made these pieces. I don't know what he read, because Brit doesn't know anything about the Sharp MZ. No idea on that. So it's just another crazy British computer. But the Jupiter was very similar, just a crazy random thing that Brent picked. And I had to look into it this week. Well, it turns out this thing was only around for like a year and a half, maybe. And there weren't a ton of games for it. It's just a wacky. There's really only one model of it, It's got a kind of a nutty story behind it. But I'll be damned if there's not an emulator for it. There's not a ROM group for it. But Brent picked a ROM that we couldn't find. And I asked him today, I'm like, where the hell is your ROM? And he goes, I don't know. Well, then he found it. Then he played it. Both his games are only two-player games. So he killed those games. He picked a new game, Attic Raid. And so I've got a night to play Attic Raid, And so, but he made the right choice because Attic Raid's way better than Hangman and Moo, which are his original choices.
Seeing those pie pieces reminds me of the real reason why I left ARG Presents.
Why? It wasn't me?
No. This was at a time, if you recall correctly, this was at a time when I wanted to actually stop doing both shows. Do you remember when
you've done that a bunch of times.
Well, right? No, this was the last serious time.
You waver between I'm quitting every show to let's add 6 shows. There's no in between. He wants to quit all shows or add 50 shows. So
one of the main reasons why I grew so tired was because making the pie pieces was very labor intensive.
That is weak. That's the weakest thing I've ever heard.
No, it's not, because see how Brent makes the pie pieces? Those are different than the way that I did. My pie pieces were works of art. I would spend 20 times more time doing the episode art for those early ARG Presents episodes where I had you in the headlock and I had all the fonts and stuff.
Yeah, that's all gone.
Yeah,
we don't do that. Let me tell you something. Brent does a utilitarian job of making new pie pieces occasionally. He just made some a couple weeks ago. We already had one that he made. That was my fault. So it can be a trifle, but the good thing, his lethargy is everyone's bonus.
That's right.
Because who here has even played any? I'll tell you something. I'm going to spoil the show. The Jupiter only shipped they had a shipment of 5,000 and a shipment of like 800. Okay, so at the maximum, they had 5,800 Jupiter Aces shipped. When they were sold out, they went bankrupt. There were 1,600 in the vault. So at that point, you're looking at 4,200 shipped total. Some of these came to America, believe it or not. Okay, it's a Jupiter Ace 4000. And then the rest of these were in the UK. So these things go for big money, and no one's got one. Okay? So where are you going to? Who's covering the Jupiter Ace? There's nobody covering this sucker. All right, it's us. There's one guy that put up videos for Brent's games. He put up all the videos for it. One guy. It's an unusual low-end system, much like the Auric. This is way lower than those. So I feel like whenever we go over these crazy European systems, it's almost a badge that I feel like we're getting for having the guts to even attempt to try to play these games.
They should send you a patch, like an Activision patch, saying,
I
talked about the Auric.
I want a Sam Coupe patch, I want an Auric patch, I want a Thompson patch, and I want a Jupiter patch. Those four, and maybe a Wonder Swan black and white. And speaking of Wonder Swan, the Time Warp game store in Ashland, I thought they were out of business. Well, I stopped in there.
How close are they to their big liquor emporium over there in Ashland? There's a big liquor store there. Chad and I went over there.
Store?
The Ashland Beverage something.
I've not been to that.
Oh, okay.
You have to fill me in.
All
This is downtown. So I go in there, and lo and behold, they're still in business. And what do they have there? They've got TurboGrafx games. They've got Final Fantasy for the Wonder Swan setting in there.
I knew it.
I almost died. Now, I would have bought this. I would have bought it like that. But it's for the Wonder Swan color.
Right.
And what we have is the Wonder Swan black and white.
I swear, you told me that this machine never came out in the United States, but I swear that in a GameStop, I saw a blister pack like they used to sell the Neo Geo Pocket Color with a Wonder Swan and a copy of Final Fantasy in it.
Well, there you go. My research did not unveil any Wonder Swan colors that were sold in the States, but there you go.
Now, of all...
By the way, $20. I should have bought it.
That's a pretty good deal.
We don't have a Wonder Swan color.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
What would you do with it?
Brent's got a Wonder Swan black and white, but that's it. So.
Yeah. Thanks, tapes. Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the Tapes Express?
I can't remember who sent that. It might have been Tapes. Thank you for whoever, because Brent's got it now.
So, out of all these obscure computers, which one, A, did you find the most obscure, and B, did you find the most surprisingly good?
Well, the Thompson was surprisingly good. I will say that. I'm trying to remember which one had Yeti on it.
That was the Thompson.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And that was when the Auric was a very capable machine, by the way. But the Thompson, we loved Yeti. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I cover this week, I cover a game on the Jupiter Ace called Jumpman. Now, I know you've played Jumpman on the Atari, Kalika, which is the classic Jumpman.
Right. This is not your classic
No,
Jumpman.
it's not. And it shows you what happens if Jumpman is put in the wrong hands. This is not a capable system to pull off that Jumpman.
Right.
And it shows you how crummy it can be. But the Auric, it's funny, when I think of the systems, I was stunned at how much I enjoyed. The number one of all of them is the Sam Coupe. I thought that was awesome. I love that episode. And I believe there are a few people out there that have one of these machines, but they're super rare, you know. I will say the Jupiter Ace is an interesting system because ZX Spectrum developers made the system. They left the Spectrum and it came to this. And so this was their sort of answer to the Spectrum in some ways. It really was the original Spectrum. Mm-hmm. And ironically, the ZX Spectrum, I believe it is the Spectrum, that has an emulator that plays these games.
Really?
Yeah. So the games we cover tomorrow on ARG can sort of be emulated.
So I could have even run these Jupiter games on the Spectaculator emulator.
One thing about the Jupiter, it's black and white. It's monochrome. So there's no color.
Yeah.
And so the games are, rudimentary, and this thing was never meant to play games, and it's amazing how difficult it was. And this is something, I don't know how much you do with this in terms of the research part.
Well, what was interesting about this was that it was designed to work with the fourth language.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you did a little research then, didn't you?
Into it.
The fourth language, I think that's the only micro ever released that was, and the fourth language is considered vastly superior to basic.
By all accounts, it is the superior beginner's programming language.
But it's difficult. And so that but really, by the time this came out, it's funny how the Spectrum sunk a lot of these computers. Mm-hmm. This thing is eerily similar to the Spectrum.
It looks very similar.
It's got the rubber keys,
It's
but the same
tiny,
size.
Yep.
But the Spectrum's, the capabilities of the Spectrum are, they drop the hammer on a lot of these lesser machines, And then by the time stuff like the Seb Coupe came out, the ship had sailed, And then you had, because you're not too far away from stuff like, the C64s or the Amigas, we're coming to town. And, if you set a Spectrum beside the Amiga, you're boned.
Yeah.
It's not, it is what it is. That's not to say everything on the Spectrum is worse than the Amiga, because that's not true. But, the capabilities were much higher, But I enjoy the Jupiter Ace has been on our wheel for a while, and I didn't want to put it on there because I was scared of it. It's funny how you get scared of these wheel pieces because you don't know what's going to come up. But when they come up, they're always. It's funny sometimes it's a pain in the butt. It's a real pain to emulate some of these systems, but if you could pull it off, it's actually great gratifying to play them because it's a system that's so unknown, and it gives you certain, almost like a carte blanche. It's sort of, you're paving the ground for talking about this because we're just. There's a few people that will talk about these different systems, but there's no one really.
Nobody's doing a weekly Jupiter Ace rundown.
That's right. That's right. And so I feel like I'm like saying, hey, look, here's this.
Right.
It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And plus, it's new to me. Now there may be other people that's like, oh, the Jupiter Ace, that's yesterday's news. Well, not to me, it's not.
Right.
We're in America. We didn't get any of this crap. I love the European computer horizon. I love the fact that they had so many machines, because we were near this, were we?
No.
We had a few. We had the C64, the Coco.
We had 3 or 4 dominant titans.
The Atari.
Yeah. And in Europe, it was a whole different ballgame.
That's right.
We had a bunch of different. I feel like we had a bunch of different manufacturers, but they were all releasing a bunch of clones of either IBM or you had like the Franklin Ace that was an Apple II clone.
And the IBM is so boring.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's so boring. You have been you have been introduced to the Coco, for example, and I look at the Coco. It's sort of our European computer. It's the little computer they could, and you've got to admit, because I could tell by your vigor to get one, this thing caught you off guard, didn't it?
It
in terms
did.
of its ability.
I was expecting it to be more along the lines of the Jupiter in terms of its graphical ability. And man, when I played Xenix, I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. And even the Coco 2 games looks a lot better than I thought they would.
Yeah. Don't believe the hype. The Coco 2 and the Coco 3, there are some games that support it solely, but for the most part, most games that support the Coco 2, 64K, they're going to play, you know how it is. They're going to make programs to the computer that has the most mass appeal.
Right.
And that's not an insult.
The Coco 2 is the Amiga 500.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. In terms of, not in terms of power,
but in terms of number of units out there.
Absolutely. And so it makes it fun. We have had a heck of a year. We're in the late October now. We're coming on towards the end of the year. We've got to start discussing our end of the year baloney, as we always do. But we've had a good year, and not just aside from the YouTube idiocy. The fun of starting these new shows, I've had a lot of fun on ARG with the Brent. The Brent is a card. I always enjoy working with him. And the Sinclair and the Coco, adding the Coco show, it's been a great time to play these games. And I've enjoyed being introduced to the Coco. These Amiga games, it's amazing how many we continue to find that I've never played. And this week's is no exception. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great, a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun with our buddies. I can't complain.
Yeah, it's been a good year.
It sure has.
Is there anything left? Is there anything, especially talking about ARG? This is kind of like the show where we talk about ARG because I'm not on ARG.
Yeah, you were on ARG.
Well,
do you remember what drove you off ARG? What broke you?
I just told you. It was a combination, and this is my mouth
You're
to
shooting.
God's ears.
You're
I'm
shooting
straight. I'm going to turn this chair around and sit backwards.
Don't do that.
Like that one movie.
You got to turn your hat backwards too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the combination of having to play 2 additional games every week. Okay. But that was really okay. It was all of the creation, the needless creation that I did, all of the YouTube cover art.
You're very thorough, Boat, and that's your strength and your weakness.
The printing of the pie pieces. I even did an ending screen that had next week's games on it.
Yeah.
And all of those things just added up. I was spending so much more time, and I couldn't deal with it, and I had to let go.
You've learned a lot more about OBS and production since then. Okay.
I could automate a lot of that stuff,
sure.
and I would not bother at all
right.
with the cover art.
I do.
Here's another thing too. The way that you guys do games now is better. Because remember how you did it originally, where with the envelopes?
That was my idea, and it was a bad idea.
Yeah, the way you do it now, it would have been.
Well, I thought that it would be a way that we could pick games that weren't totally random. That was my thought on it. But
I ended up picking a bunch of games that were totally random.
Yeah.
And because the die was already cast at the beginning of the end of the week before, I was stuck.
Yeah, ditching the envelopes was a good move. It's funny when I go back and look at the early episodes, and you've kind of combined the games into a name. What it makes is a name that no one knows what that's going on.
Exactly. You can't search for it. I thought I was being so again.
And it was clever. It was super clever.
And I would sit there and ponder, and then I would make like the Lady Smurf Blue Mambazo, or I used our pixel art. And I mean, it's just needless.
It was super clever. The problem, but I mean, it was. Listen, It's funny. Our channel is interesting. We don't get huge numbers. In a podcast, I don't know what we do, but I have a vague idea of what we do video wise. And I've looked at our audience. Our audience has skewed more and more out of America. Mm-hmm. Which, hey, don't get me wrong, we love our American audience, but we have just I handle the Bible. We've never planned like let's ditch America. We're gonna go all European and Australia, New Zealand. I've noticed our German listenership has went up.
Yeah.
Never a plan we had, or French. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it went. We haven't changed over the years in terms of Amigos for sure. We've never changed. we are slaves to our whatever we've got, our show build up. But it's just the way our interests have went. I guess more than anything else. Mm-hmm. I mean, because we both got interested in the Sinclair.
Right.
And we love it.
Well, a lot of that came from people like Gary. Gary sent us that Sinclair.
The Huck, yeah. And we love the Sinclair. Mm-hmm. And listen, you can do one Amiga game a week, unless it's PD, right? You can do one. Because the Amiga games are advanced.
Next week we're doing 2 Amiga games, by the way.
Well, okay.
It's Halloween show.
Okay, but I mean, yeah. But I mean, like, you can do one Amiga game normally.
Yeah, right.
Then and that's it. Mm-hmm. Then the Sinclair game, normally, it's like that. It's a fun little diversion.
Yeah, it's like a little sweet, little.
And then the Coco is very similar, and we do the Coco a couple times a month, no problem.
Right.
And an ARG, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's always wacky. It's not that bad, but I was funny. I was talking to a guy in Discord earlier. In the tomorrow when we tape shows, all right, and who knows when this will air. I'm doing Amigos, our Sinclair, and 2 Coco shows with 2 games each. Okay, so that's 6 games in one day. Plus, I'm doing ARG where I have to play 2 games. So that's 8 games I had to have ready to go and researched. Okay, right. Now that sounds daunting. Okay, it is, but a bunch of those games are the kind of games that I love, and they're the kind of games that you play. They're arcadey. They're quick action games that you don't have to like spend. And it's not like Armageddon,
right?
Where you have to really sit there and like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. That's why the Amiga game. You could not do 2 or 3 Amiga games a week. That's a no. Never. They're much more advanced, And you know me, and I know you, and we both love these sort of arcadey, twitchy type, wham bam Bob's your uncle sort of games, and it made it so it's not a big deal to do that. It's also not something we do every week. It's not like I'm ever going to do that again.
This may be your all-time record, 8 games in one day.
Yes, but I mean, let me tell you, I've spent the week splitting up my time between the games. I will say, with the exception of Brent's ARG game, which he changed today.
Yeah.
Okay.
A late change.
So I haven't had a whole lot of time to play that one, but the rest of them I've played quite a bit. In fact, I've streamed. I mean, didn't stream them, but I've recorded a couple of playthroughs of them. And I'm trying to do more of that. And it's fun. And as my son grows older and I've got more time to do this, I enjoy it more. So
before you know it, he's just going to be like, Dad, give me the keys. He's going to take off, and you're going to be here with the games.
I'm going to tell you a story, and we'll close this down.
Okay.
You know, I love the Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't know, this is the 60th anniversary of the Twilight Zone.
The real version, the one from the 90s, right?
No, the one from the 50s and 60s. Rod Serling. And, you know, I've been trying to get my son to watch Twilight Zone, you know. And so we started him with Terror at 20,000 feet or wherever, the Shatner one with the thing on the wing of the plane. You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen the Twilight Zone.
Well, you need to watch these. So,
okay.
Anyway, it's a very well-known episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, okay, this scared the crap out of Luke. Let's tone it down. So
right.
Then we watched one where this old man, it's a country one, where this old man dies. Him and his dog are walking down this path, and they're lured into hell by this guy. And the guy's going to go in and he goes, well, you can't take your dog into hell. You know, he thinks
all
it's
dogs go to heaven.
He thinks it's heaven. He goes, we won't accept your dog. He's like, I'm not going anywhere the dog's not welcome.
Right.
He goes on down the path, all of a sudden there's heaven. They let the dog in. It was a beautiful little country thing. Same guy that wrote it.
And then at the end, his glasses fell off. And
no.
right?
The same guy that wrote the Waltons wrote this episode.
Really?
Yeah. So there are people misunderstand the Twilight Zone. There are plenty of like good country episodes, and they don't portray the country folk as like idiots.
Right.
I mean, they're actual, because this is the way people are.
Yeah.
You know. So we watched it. Then we watched one called with Frisbee in it. Played by Andy Devine, the cowboy actor from the back in the day. If you never heard of him, he was in all like the John Wayne movies stuff. And he played this guy he owned a country store. And he's just sitting around telling tall tales all the time, and no one believed anything he said. And then suddenly he's kidnapped by aliens because they monitor his conversation. They think he's the smartest, most apt man on earth because he keeps telling everybody how great he is, but it's not true. They don't understand what lying is. He enjoyed that. Okay, so Teresa said, listen, we've got to show Luke one this week. It's Halloween coming up. That is scary. Okay? And so we did Eye of the Beholder. Now, I'm
D&D
assuming
guy.
you haven't seen Eye of the Beholder, but the premise of this episode is this woman is there in the episode with her face bandaged up, and she is there on the government's dime to have surgery to make her less hideous. She's so hideous that no one can stand to be around her. And if this surgery doesn't take, she'll be shunned from the community. That's how hideous she is.
Okay. And
so the whole time, and you can only watch this episode once, because once you watch it once, you know the ending.
Right.
And so I've seen it hundreds of times. And I'm watching Luke watch it, and he's sitting there like this. He's hiding his face when they start taking this chick's bandages off. You know, he's like, I can't handle it. I'm like, put your hands down. You got to watch it. And so they take her bandages off, and lo and behold, she's beautiful. Beautiful blonde. It's actually the chick from Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh, yeah. I knew something like that.
You know, and so she's beautiful. And Luke's like, what's going on? And they showed the doctors and all the nurses, and they're all hideous pig creatures.
Yeah.
That's the gimmick.
Yeah.
And watching that through Luke's eyes was the best thing I've done for a long time, because you only see that episode one time, and I got to experience it again. And it sounds hokey, but
there's nothing hokey about it.
It made me so happy to be a dad. It made me so happy.
It's the same feeling I get every time that I take my kids somewhere from school. Taking them to play with the high school band for the first time, something like that. It's a great feeling. It's that dopey dad fun. And it was outstanding. Well, you'll have lots of opportunities for stuff like that. Going forward, you only watch. I'm trying to get him into the Twilight Zone because it is a Paramount top shelf. Top show of all time. Right. Plus, I do personally love it, and it made me so happy to see him really enjoy this episode. And that was so my Halloween's made, and so assuming we're gonna put this out before Halloween. So if you practice the celebration of Halloween in your town or country, I'm assuming most people do, right? No. Really? No, it's an entirely American thing. Well, let me tell you something. All right. Just for me, your good buddy Amigo Aaron. Sit down, get yourself some cold one. I recommend, by the way, right here, Boat, tell them what this is. That's Kraken rum. The Kraken. I suggest the Kraken. And then watch yourself some Twilight Zones and bask in the glorious glow of Rod Serling and his incredible dialogue. And enjoy a Halloween moment for old Amigo Aaron. Any party thoughts? No, we've kind of gone around the world on this. I love it. See you guys later. Adios.